Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This will be the third and final video in the series of how to improve your Mythic Plus rating. For this one, I wanted to talk about a few things. In the first one, we talked about the affixes and what they do. In the second one, we talked about the dungeons, and then things like boss mechanics, interrupt, stun, skips, routes, add-ons you can use, and the covenant bonuses in the dungeons. For this video, I wanted to start off with the covenants and what they can do for you. For most specs in the game, it's basically just one that is a lot stronger than the other ones. So in my case, I'm playing enhancement shaman. There are a few different builds possible, but I think, in my opinion, the strongest at the moment is Necrolord, because it gives you a ton of haste, which is really strong for enhancement shamans. The Venthyr one can work out as well, but it will need a bit more mobs altogether to constantly keep your flame shocks up, to keep getting your covenant ability back quicker. Otherwise, it's not too strong. The Kyrian one for me now is actually pretty bad. Night Fae can work, but is primarily good in single target. So that's why I picked Necrolord. But in the case that we have a group and we really need a covenant that we don't have yet, it might be really good if you can actually play another covenant. Now this might mean that when you switch to another covenant, so for instance I'm normally Necrolord, if I'm switching over to Venthyr, I will also play another legendary. Now I will play the same spec basically, because it actually does the same. But as you can see in my stats, I only have 16% critical strike, and when I'm Venthyr, I would actually like a bit more crit instead of the high mastery that I have now. So the damage will be a bit less. I always carry my fiery skybreakers as well, so I actually can switch. I also have my witch doctor wolf bones, so if we need a bit more single target, I can do that. I always carry some of the other legendaries with me, also trinkets, and for now I have legendary in the wrist slot, so I have other wrists with me as well, just so we can swap if we need to. Now I do like the Venthyr playstyle. I have played Season 1 and the start of Season 2 with Venthyr. I really like it. When 9.2 was announced with the legendaries, the double legendaries, it looked really promising and really strong, but it actually was a bit less strong than Necrolord because the haste it gives you is just so much better. But in some situations, Venthyr can still work. Now Night Fae, if you really need it, could still work, but this is probably the case for every spec in the game. There's one that you will play, one that is actually better than all the rest, but if you really need it, you could probably swap to one other as well. What you can do is just try it out. So for me, instead of Necrolord, just go Venthyr, play a day as a Venthyr in Mythic Plus, see what it does, see how it feels, see where you can improve on, because it might mean that you play it a little differently. Now ideally I would like more crit instead of mastery, but I don't have that. So what you could also do is actually get a second set of items where you can swap out a few of the items that have, so for instance my gloves don't have crit. This might not be the best example as it is the tier set, but let's see, my waist has crit and mastery. Maybe I can find a waist that has, instead of high mastery low crit, has high crit instead of the high mastery. That would already be better. My boots have haste verse. Verse is actually not too good for enhancement shammies. I could try and find haste crit boots in order to be able to play Ventir a bit better. Now that's just the first step to improving as well with your covenants. It's just understanding what it does and know how to play with it. And this doesn't mean that you need to play all the covenants, because it's probably not realistic to be really strong in everything, as some are just not as good as the others. But if you can play one other, it will already open up some windows for you. Then the next thing on the list is actually just knowing your class. Now, if you play Mythic Plus, I probably don't have to tell you how to optimize the rotation and stuff like that, but start off with just the basics. Know what the spells do. Start learning your rotation. Try it on dummies. Try it on lower Mythic Plus dungeons, and maybe even ask some other players that you come in contact with, or if you play with, let's say, I'm now playing a survival hunter as well. Last night we did a dungeon and there was a level 60 survival hunter who actually was really high rated, and I just asked him, hey, do you have any tips on playing survival? It's my first time playing it. I really like the spec, but is there anything I need to know before I can do some really high keys once I get level 60 and get the gear for it? That way you can sometimes get really good tips and tricks. Also, I always try to look at the damage breakdowns at the end of fights. Now, I don't know all the classes, but for me, I always look at the Shemis. I try to look at hunters because I'm interested in playing a hunter, just to see what spells do really high damage and stuff like that. But also, I check the healers. Are they healing me by a lot? If that's the case, then I might need to switch up some things in my rotation or in my spells to use a bit more defensive things. That's also things you can improve on in the Mythic Plus dungeons. Because the rotation and knowing how your rotation works is basically only just most of the times, only just the damage output. But you also need to know what to do when something goes wrong. You want to know how to get out of those situations, how to stay alive. So for me, I have basically on all my characters, I have the same key bound keys for defensive things and heals. So I always have a heal on 8, the Warlock Stone, or a Kyrian Steward Vial on 7. I always have defensives on Control 3, and most of the times on Shift 4 I have either a defensive, a big defensive, or a Covenant ability. Don't ask me how I got with these, but it just works for me, so that's what I'm using. But know what you can do when something goes wrong in the key, just to make sure that you can survive, but also maybe kill the pack with only 1 or maybe 2 deaths instead of a full team wipe. If you can help your healer out in a dungeon, that's always really good. Now, I do think for Mythic Plus it's really nice to have a bit of versatility, because it will just increase the damage you can take, or it will decrease the damage enemies do to you, which is really nice. Now for Shemis it's not too good, but again, on my hunter I'm playing survival. It's actually really strong, and I've read that in dungeons that you'd rather have haste first instead of haste crit, what normally would be the best for a survival hunter. So that's all kind of things you can work on to get the right stuff, and it's mainly the secondary stats. Your main stat that's solid. You need the main stat. That's it. No doubt about that. So the secondary stats is a thing you can look at, and I already talked about it briefly, but for me there are some things I can improve upon, like my ring. It's a 278, which is nice. It has haste and verse. Verse is actually pretty bad for me. If I had this on my hunter, I would be really happy, as it's probably one of the better rings. So that's also the next part, optimizing everything. And you don't have to go into full detail, full min-max mode. But what you can do is just check what you need. What stats do I need? For me, I know it's with the build I'm usually playing as Necrolord, it's haste mastery. So I want high haste, I want high mastery. Right now I'm at 38 and 49%, which is pretty good, I think. It works out for me. So what I can do now is just check all the items. Is there anything I need to change? Well, I have this ring, it's 278, but it has furs. It's not that good. A ring with mastery or even crit would be a lot better already. Now my boots could improve a bit. My waist could improve. My necklace is pretty good actually. My cloak is crit haste. It's not the worst, but I always would like to have a bit of crit. So I would probably keep this, but it's 262, so I can upgrade it. I have 2 crit haste weapons, which is pretty nice for, again, a bit of extra crit. But there are a lot of things that are not the highest item level I can get them. So I can improve on the item level just to get a bit more main stat and secondary stats in to boost my damage a little bit. Then also, in terms of boosting your damage, there are a few other things. Make sure you have enchants on your gear. Like on the rings, you can have the secondary stats. I have 2 times 16 haste. It's not the most amount of haste, but it's still something. It can just get you over that threshold that you need in order for your build to work, if that's something that you're up against. Besides the enchants, you also need to make sure that you use your buffs. So for me, I need to make sure I have Wind Fury and Flame Tongue up, but also my Lightning Shield, as my Lightning Shield deals decent damage. It's not the best, it's not a 10% damage increase or something, but it might still be a little bit of extra damage extra that will make all the encounters in a dungeon easier. Then besides that, you have the food buffs. So once you know which secondary stat is best for you, you can craft with, let me get to the WoW UI, with the foods, with the large meals, you have meals that will give you a well-fed bonus for an hour, and you have them with, I think, all the secondary stats. So you can use those in Mythic Plus dungeons if you are rich or have enough materials farmed. You can also use feasts, which will give you main stat, which is, I think, in 99% of the times the better option. And besides that, you have your flasks, which will increase, like the Flask of Power, it will increase your main stat by 70 for an hour. Then in certain encounters you can use potions. You have potions of agility, strength, intellect. Let's see, where are the potions? They're up here. You have a lot of potions, also potions that work well together with oils. So you really need to check out which is the best for you. Potion of stamina, increase your stamina by a bit. All these things can help out in harder encounters or bigger fights if you want to burst. I always use my spectral agility potions just to bump up my agility by even more. And then also you have the Augment runes, which will increase your main stat by 18. Now if you are, I think it is exalted with the Enlightened, you can get the Eternal Augment rune. It will cost, I think, 40,000 gold. But if you have that, you can use it. And as you can see, it goes on a cooldown for 1 minute, but it's not gone. So when you die, normally a rune wears off. But if you die here, you can just reapply it and no big deal. This really is a pretty nice upgrade. So get all these things, and you don't have to get this the second you get into a Mythic Plus for the first time. But go ahead and invest some time and gold into getting these things like flasks, runes, feasts, or the food buffs that you need, um, and go get in there. Get into Mythic Plus, push some keys, and see where you can end up on. Also, one more addition to the gear. If you have gear or get into the vault and you don't know what to pick, sometimes it's a pretty hard choice, or it's pretty hard to decide if it's even better or not. If you're not sure, try to sim your character. This really works. I use raid bots for this myself, and it's actually pretty nice. You can find all the little things in there to see how much of an upgrade it is. So for instance, I ran a sim on my character. If I would get the 278 main hand weapon, but then it takes into account that I will have the main hand weapon and the same offhand I have now, and it's already a 140 DPS increase. But in there you can basically just put your gear, put the items you get in the vault in there as well to see if it's an upgrade or not, and then just pick the highest upgrade from there. Or if something is the best in slot item, I would always pick that over the highest upgrade. Always pick the best in slot first, as it's pretty hard to get your best in slot stuff. But yeah, try it out. I use raidbots.com for this, to sim my character and just see what's best. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know down below in the comments. If you want to know anything, just ask. And good luck in your keys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.